And now we have Asher G. The G is for gangster. And Asher Gottsman has an interesting title. So I think he fits in perfectly to the reality pill. So the reality pill, the whole basis of this for everybody is, I'm sure you've realized from our other podcast, is that we like to kind of dispel myths and bullshit and clarify things. And I think Asher G here is the perfect man to help us. And I will just begin by saying he carries the title of Rabbi in addition to, I think, a spiritual consultant, a connector of people, a father, a prior addict, a psychiatrist or psychologist in some ways. And I think there's like 1,000 other titles for you. You have a podcast yourself, and it's called Showing Up, and Showing Up with Asher G. And I think it's interesting kind of concept, because showing up, it kind of infers that you need to take some kind of responsibility, or what's this showing up about?
So that's a great question. So everybody has moments in their life. Sometimes it's daily. Sometimes it's weekly, sometimes it's annually, and sometimes it's what's in your life where you have these pivotal moments that you have to show up. And sometimes they're really small moments, not huge moments, where I can be kind, I can cheat, I can, even if I'm going to get away with it, I have decisions to make that can take me in one or two directions. And showing up is, how did I show up for myself when others were going in a different direction? How did I, or various different areas. For many people, showing up was at their lowest point. So I like to speak to people who are in different forms of recovery, because traditionally we know recovery is drugs and alcohol. Yet there's recovery from grief, and there's recovery from divorce, and there's recovery from business failure, and there's recovery from, I've worked with doctors that have made mistakes in the office or have had mistakes made in their lives. And they, for a doctor especially, it's very difficult to recognize mistake, because it's humiliating. And the whole idea is, I want it to be humility, not humiliating. Right?
Yeah.
I want us to find the humility in it and realize we're all fallible.
And so I've dealt with a lot of psychiatrists in my life, and from kind of going through med school, and I always wonder to myself, what makes you such an expert? Like when I talk to them, and I think that a lot of psychiatrists can guide you well, even though they have their own flaws in their lives, and others cannot. So, they're just unable to for whatever reason. But then I look at you and I say, okay, what makes you such an expert? And I think part of your history makes you such an expert. Would you explain for everybody? I've got a brief insight on your childhood, going back to, issues you may have had from a young age, but what brought you down this path? If you just want to kind of start
Sure,
from,
of course. Yeah. So
through the back sides, what you've learned from it, and how you actually got through your whatever you studied, including rabbinical studies.
So yeah, let's start off by, I like to joke that I'm like everybody else. I grew up the son of an Orthodox rabbi. Not everybody else, but in Beverly Hills, there's others that would be like that. And I grew up in what I believed was the poor parts of Beverly Hills. So for those of us that have been in Beverly Hills and know Beverly Hills, know that there are people that do believe that, right? If you're south of Wilshire versus north of Santa Monica, it's all a mindset. Yet I was the youngest in my family by 8.5 years, and none of these things made me who I was. Yet in my household, two people were respected: those that had a lot of money because they could help with the school, and those that were very learned. And I actually wanted to have a lot of money, yet I also decided I would get learned as an insurance policy. And so I got learned. And actually, when I got ordained as a rabbi, the rabbi asked me, "Why'd you do that?" And I said, "I did it to please my mother." And he started laughing. He said, "Well, had you told me that, I wouldn't have made you go through all the rigorous testing." So I think he was joking, but who knows? And then I proceeded to wanting to make a lot of money. And I did, and I was successful for a while, yet I was abusing substances and different kinds of substances. First, it was food, actually. And then it was, lying, cheating, narcotics, alcohol. And what happened was, between 2005 and 2008, I lost everything. And I decided that I had no value in this world. And the gift was that I used that period of time to go to therapy. You ask, what does a therapist know? Or what does a psychiatrist know? A humble psychiatrist or a humble therapist allows you to know, right? So as they say, so this therapist, I walked in, I said, I'm a true narcissist, that I've never done anything good in my life without balancing out the bad. And he told me, your hardware's fine, your software's severely effed up. Do you want to do something about it? And I told him, yeah, sure. You got 19 months. I had ideas in my head that I was going to be out of this universe in 19 months. And he said, put down the coke. And I did. And then he goes, put down the booze. And I was like, And he actually sent me to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I went to the meeting and I came back and I said, you're a real a-hole. Not only did I lose my money and my dignity, you're going to compare me to a junkie on the street. So, and this guy had 20 some odd years sober at the time. And then I said to him, growing up with 613 commandments versus 12 steps, I'll take 12 steps any day.
Yeah.
And actually at that point, I actually started going to Overeaters Anonymous. To cut the story, to move the story along, March 19th, 2008, I went back to that same meeting, and I call it a low bottom because people were talking about shooting heroin. I don't even know if I had ever seen heroin at that point in time. And yet I was able to identify. And I decided, it's time for me to see myself as I am, just like everybody else. I'm no greater than, nor no less than. I actually then and there came up with my definition of humility, which is I'm no greater than, nor no less than. Because ego will tell us you're greater than and you can get away with it, or you're less than and you might as well not try. Right? Yeah. I'm too fat. I can't go on it. Whatever. Right? Whatever. I'm not going to try. Or me, I can get away with anything I want. It'll never say you're right size and you got to do it. And that's where the journey began. And then I actually started studying with a rabbi who had been to jail for 14 years at a program called Beit Tshuva, and he guided me into this area of work. And he said, you know what, you were put on this earth to help people help themselves. And I said, okay, let's go.
And what I want to go back to and try to think of, I don't think anything stemmed from a particular thing in our did having a religious father, you think, contribute to? Because I've seen in people that I had this girl that I knew once who her father, Eastern Orthodox pastor. He was a great guy for the community, but he really controlled his kids too much, and these kids, all of them, turned out fairly psychotic because they were just stressed so much by do this, do that. Many broke out.
Sure, it's a great question. So there's no doubt that happens a lot, and in my household, it happened somewhat. I was the youngest though, so they kind of allowed me a little more leeway. And you're right, those that don't buy the doctrine, that want to challenge the doctrine, usually go off the deep end, and it definitely contributed to it. Yet it ended up being my best teacher, actually. And what I mean by that is, at my son's bar mitzvah, I turned to my dad and I said, Dad, my entire life, I ran away from you because I didn't want to be like you. And I didn't want to not be like you. Right? So I didn't want to be like you. I didn't want to be religious like you. And I didn't want to not be religious in case you were right, was what I was saying to him. Little did I know I'd end up doing exactly what you did, just for a different population. And yeah. you gave unconditional love to Jewish youth, and I get to give it to people who suffer. I actually changed that a little while later, and I said, Dad, now it makes total sense, because the preacher, the Eastern Orthodox rabbi, priest, the rabbi, they get a lot of love from their community, right? So I said, Dad, you received unconditional love from Jewish youth, and I receive it from people who suffer. And what I learned by that is I have to make sure that the people that don't kiss my butt, like my children, that I'm still present with them, that I don't forget about them. And that's what tends to end up happening in a household like that, is they'll go, the Eastern Orthodox, priest goes into his chapel or his church, and everybody's so excited to see him. And then he comes home and his kids are like, Dad, or whatever it is. They don't treat him with the same reverence. So I think that's what led to it. So it was a great teaching and learning moment for myself. Yet definitely being sheltered can be a great thing if you could keep somebody sheltered. Unfortunately, when they go into the real world, they start tasting and they're like, oh.
Right. Right.
Tastes good.
Yeah. And do you use any of this in like raising your own kids now, trying to give them a little more freedom, or I see the way that I saw I met, for everyone who doesn't know, I met you at a wedding, and you were the rabbi at the wedding, and I kind of looked and said, who is this guy? He's not the typical. I don't like going to weddings and listening to a rabbi or a priest or anybody talk for 45 minutes and recite the same thing. It bores me. I don't enjoy that, and it's a wedding and it's a nice ceremony, but when you did it, it was rather unorthodox, which would be kind of the opposite, I guess, of how your dad would have done things.
That's the whole idea. I want to be non-traditional, and I have one rule: be respectful of one another. You can disagree with me. You can even hate me. Just don't spit at me, talk to me, have an open dialogue with me. Let us have an open dialogue together. Let us treat one another with kindness and respect. After that, I am not in charge of your decisions. I'm gonna raise you in a certain way. I'm gonna guide you in a way, and then I'm going to love you no matter what. Whereas in the older generation, it was, we as children must love our parents no matter what. And I say we as parents must love our children no matter what. That's the shift.
Yeah. And going through kind of the changes in your life, the other interesting part that I saw is what you mentioned about going into AA. And I don't think a lot of people from the outside understand how Alcoholics Anonymous works or why it works. And I think it's interesting to ask you, because I've compared it in the past to religion, because with addiction, you're kind of stuck in the same habit, doing things, and you have a repetitive behavior. And Alcoholics Anonymous, when the first time I was reading the 12 steps in the booklet it was in medical school, actually, I looked at it and I'm like, holy shit, they're kind of substituting one addiction for another. And when I read it, it's kind of like a religion to me. Like I feel like I'm reading some kind of short Bible, and they maybe pull away your addictive personality from something harmful to something that's not so harmful, and pull you into that. Now, do you see any kind of parallels between religion, addiction, and AA itself?
So there's no doubt that AA comes from Judeo-Christian values, right? The founders of AA were Christian, and they actually left what's called the Oxford Group, which was a Christian sect. Yet it allows for a God of your own understanding. It also talks to the agnostic. So so all these problems that many of us have had with religion, it kind of addresses, and it doesn't require it to be one religion or another religion. But what religion does offer, right, is community, sense of belonging. What ends up being a huge problem for religion is when you don't feel like you belong, or you don't feel like you're a part of, then it separates you, which is a real problem. What I have at least found is in this community is for people, they're just there together to get better. They're not there because they were born into a certain religion or their parents told them they had to. I find that AA only works when it's a attraction rather than promotion. When somebody's forced to go there, it sucks. It doesn't make sense. When somebody goes there voluntarily because they want a community of people to support them, in their own internal goals, then it becomes great. And I think it's the same thing with religion, right? Religion, when you feel forced into it, it's confining, it's constricting, it's restricting, and it could be horrible. It's gossip, so many. Yet when you come voluntarily, it's one of the things I love about Judaism, and I don't want to get necessarily too much into Judaism, or if you want to, I'm happy to. Yet Judaism is one of the only religions that it's attraction, not promotion. If you want to convert, they say don't. Like, it's cool, we'll have you, but why do that? You can be a great person without being a Jew. Where many other religions, I don't say all, will, want to get as many people to be part of that religion as possible. So is it replacing? Sure. But what are you replacing? What are they asking you to replace with? To forgive yourself, to turn your power, your will, and your life over to something bigger than you, so you're not in charge of it, to apologize and not only apologize, but make up for when you were wrong, right? And then lastly, to give it for fun and for free. And the coolest thing is there's no one making big bucks off of it.
Yeah.
Right. So that to me, right, that to me is the in a cult, right? People say it's a cult. I said, well, there's no cult leader, number one. And
Right.
number two, it's a pretty cool cult because it's free.
Yeah. In most religions and most cults, there's somebody massively benefiting from it. That's how it. And same with politics, right? These things like to get it into powerful positions to make money in AA. I've had a lot of friends who I've met throughout life who have been through it, and they all say it's an amazing, interesting thing. I've seen you interview a lot of different types of people, and in them are different types of addicts. There's a few actors and comedians, I think, right?
Sure.
I feel like there's a group of people who kind of fall into addiction more easily. For some reason, it's comedians, psychiatrists, and anesthesiologists.
Well, psychiatrists and anesthesiologists have. Well, I don't know about psychiatrists, but anesthesiologists have a lot of access.
Yeah. Have you found yourself somehow coming across these people to help them and guide them outside of AA? Because I saw you had something called Transcend.
Yes, so we have something called Transcend Recovery Community, which is our treatment facilities where we help people with mental health and addiction issues, and sometimes addiction are process addictions like love addiction, love addiction and sex addiction. And so we work with people, and with people that just have mental health, whether it's grief, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, etc. Let me clarify, schizophrenia, they have to be medicated, and as bipolar, in order for us to work with them. We're not a stabilization center. So yes, I've had the privilege of working with many people in many different walks of life. And, comedians are funny because they talk about some of the scariest, darkest things in their lives, right? So, and it crosses over. Artists in general have a lot of a dark side. I don't know why psychiatrists specifically. I've never, and I'm not sure. I do know a lot anesthesiologists. I've seen quite a few. There was a doctor's program, a professional program for doctors in Los Angeles run by Promises many years ago. And we were the housing component for them. So we worked, so I met a lot of doctors. They have a lot of access, right? So to narcotics, so.
Yeah. And when you're helping guide people through this, I've seen a lot of the videos that you make. You try to guide people through understanding. And part of that is kind of leaving anger behind and understanding each other in relationships that you talk about. So let's not hate, let's educate. And then you have other things that you've spoken about to help people understand each other when they disagree. One of those things, I saw you making a video saying, help enlighten the other person and see if they're open to feedback. How do you guide somebody through something disagreeable? Let's say you've come across a narcissist. The narcissist or a cluster B personality, the histrionic, and all those are very difficult to deal with. And if they get an addiction on top of that, I mean, it's going to be a hell of a thing to try to get them out of it. How do you deal with those people in general? Because you do give a lot of positive feedback from what it seems like, to tell people they're worth it, they're great people, inside they're valuable. But narcissists aren't also great. So how do you walk people through this?
So first, I always say, there's very few people where I can't identify myself in them a little bit. Okay, so I look at the narcissist within me too. And who's the narcissist within me? It's the scared little boy that nobody really wants to listen to. So I'm going to be big, right? And I'm going to be the center of attention, and I'm going to, make you eat your words. I'm going to be a bully, right? And they show up in all different types of forms. And I believe that that's based in trauma. And if I can allow you to see your humanity, hopefully you can at least understand how your narcissism is affecting others. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix it. And I don't look to fix anything. It's your job to fix you. It's my job to allow you the space, right? I'm not an artist like you, Dr. Ben, right? You're an artist. You take everybody knows you are the best at face in the world, I'm going to say, okay? And you take a face and you see it and you fix it. Psychiatry, you brought up a really great point, deals with symptoms. It doesn't deal with the problem, right? It doesn't understand the brain. It gives you medicine to deal with the symptoms of the problem. In the same way, I don't want to deal with symptoms. I want you to address, is this working for you as a narcissist? Is this working for you? Your kids leaving you, your family hating you, and people only liking you because they're scared of you. Does that benefit you? And if it does, then I say, okay, I got nothing to say. Yet you wouldn't be here with me if it benefited you, right? So most of the time, if I'm able to disarm somebody with love and non-judgment, then we're able to get somewhere. And then they can start instituting tools in their lives. I really believed I was a narcissist. I believed I never did anything good in my life without balancing out the bad. Because ultimately what I believed is I wasn't lovable. That if you really knew the Asher, you'd run. There's no way, if you really knew me, you'd run.
Yeah.
So when I meet with somebody, I say, I get it. I get it, you're scared. I'm not scared. What are you talking about? I do more tasks in 15 minutes than you do in 3 years. Okay? Dude, I made my first billion by the time I was 30. Okay? How about you, butts? I've heard that. And I was like, okay, cool. How's that serving you today? I mean, is your jet empty by yourself? Like, how many people are you paying to be on the boat? Okay, cool. Enjoy it. Let's talk about it.
And you, well, my mom wants to talk about cooking.
Mom, your feelings towards Ben. That is the definition of codependency. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I might be targeting somebody here. So, Mom, stop targeting me. So, I do wonder about the difficult to treat people. Right now, more than ever, it's like the assholes in the world have come. Okay, so everybody's arguing, everybody's pissed off, everybody. Sure. And you posted a message on your Instagram that said, instead of yelling at people, hating at people, trying to get them to agree with you, see if they're agreeable to a different point of view. And then you jumped ahead and said, make sure that they, understand that your view is the right point of view. No, but I think that's a good concept, because when everybody's arguing, nobody learns. Like it's kind of in a way like religion again, where religion in the end, unless you're somebody who kind of comes forward and says, well, I believe you have the right to believe whatever you like, you can be correct too. But really, really orthodox type religious can't really say that. They have to go in and say, I fully believe this doctrine. Old school classic religious, right? And for one religion to be correct, the other one has to be wrong. There's got to be something that's wrong with the other one. So it gives some kind of superiority. But the way you talk about things is not like that. And I kind of like how you say, listen to the other person's point of view before yelling at them, asserting they're correct. So how have you used that, other than recommending to people to be nice? Do you actually institute this in any kind of treatments that you've done with people?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing, today in our world, we've gotten rid of what made America great, actually, right? What made America great was the middle class. What made America great was the center. And today we're polarized. And I'm not saying left or right is correct. I don't care. Right. I'm saying that we both have value. In my world, right, in the treatment of addiction, you have people that have what's called harm reduction model, right, which means let them use substances, not others. Let's just talk about that. Then you have abstinence model, which means don't use it at all. You have AA model, non-AA model, Buddhist recovered, Christian, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, which is how do we help people? Well, if we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, then why aren't we in the same room working on it together? So it's the same thing. At the end of the day, human beings seek two things, right? Safety and connection. So if we're all, and we all go about it most of the time in ways that'll kill us.
Yeah.
Right. So if we're all seeking that, let's just have a conversation. And I may disagree with you. It doesn't mean I hate you. And it was watching. I'm not saying I like Trump. Or didn't like Trump. I think he's a buffoon. Whatever. I think, but if I said anything he did was good, I was automatically bad.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous. There's no human being in the entire world that's all good, and there's no human being in the entire world that's all bad.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was a very polarizing time this past year. I don't think anybody owes any loyalty to any political group, to any. You don't owe loyalty to anything. You owe loyalty to other people around you. Like, that's it. Just to people, not to these groups, not to any. And I think it's ridiculous that they try to make teams and make teams fight each other, and it's fairly ridiculous. But I agree with you totally. Unfortunately, people don't always see the happy stuff. There's a lot of hate and anger that comes out, and there is a range that we did see also in the past year of people. You've seen the dark and the light in yourself. You've seen people too. How do you view people? Because I'll tell you, I see the world as kind of a range. There are people who, it's a range of everything. It's like the standard deviations that we see in high school that we learned originally. I think they hold true, the mathematical concept for really what happens in the world. And not exactly, but you have the A pluses, which are the really intelligent people, and then you have the F minuses, the really some people aren't always intelligent. Not everybody's smart.
Correct.
It's range. Not everybody's nice. There's a range, and evil people can have a tendency to do good things too. Good people can do bad things. I don't think automatically everyone's bad, everyone's good, everyone's racist automatically. I don't think these things are true. Everything's kind of a range. And I think the way that you talk about things, when I was just going through your podcast and your message on Instagram, kind of show that. Beyond advice, do you ever help guide people to the next level or yourself? Have you done anything treatment-wise that you think has worked that would not fall into classic kind of Western medicine?
So meditation. I've considered, and I'm curious about psychedelics. It's not my world yet, but I'm very curious, and I guide people towards it.
Mm-hmm.
I think for some people, it's a very worthwhile journey. And so sweat lodges, I have done those. Being in silence. So not there's some non-traditional, and I think whatever works for you is a way, as long as you're being honest with yourself, and it's a way to get better. And it's not, we're all looking for an immediate pill, right, to fix us, and there is none for this part of life, right? There's nothing that's going to come without hard work. You weren't going to become a great doctor without going to medical school. This wasn't going to happen, right? And fellowship and etc. Right? Doing all that you had to do. In the same way, you're not going to become a good human being or a great human being by not doing work. So, yet if something is holding you back and you want to use something to open you up, go for it.
Yeah.
And I encourage it. I've done TMS, which is because I have depression, anxiety, which is cranial magnetic stimulation, and it actually worked very well very well for me. So, who knows?
Yeah. So TMS is a bit different than the old school electroconvulsive therapy.
What I call it is non-invasive ECT, right? So it's actually using an MRI machine, and it feels like a zip on your head, beam, 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 and it will work on both sides, right? Because one's the alpha and the beta. One, we're producing too much. One, we're producing too little. And one's for anxiety and one's for depression. I'm not sure I'm saying the right side of the head. So, but I just describing it, and and it's a 6-week protocol. It's non-invasive. It doesn't do anything more to you, and it's pretty incredible technology for depression and anxiety. And now they're looking at it for PTSD as well.
Yeah, and I love options that are generally not harmful, especially when other ones don't work, or in lieu of even doing medication.
Right.
TMS or electroconvulsive therapy initially was you do these things when nothing else works.
Right. It does not affect memory. Someone asked if it affects memory. TMS does not, unlike ECT, which does.
Right. So ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, you generally have to be sedated in order to do it. For TMS, transcranial, you just put a probe on top and it magnetizes everything. So it's fairly harmless, and side effects are minimal. It's kind of just and irritation. I don't think there's any major side effects that I've ever heard.
No major side effects. No major side effects. You don't have to really worry. Again, you could use it with medication, not take medication. I like things that don't have major side effects. And, your mom asked about, I think it was your mom who asked about ketamine.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a believer in ketamine for treatment-resistant depression. I just don't think it's the only answer, right? Ketamine without therapy is not good. Yet I've seen people who have used ketamine, and it's a miracle. I've also seen people who've used ketamine and needed to go to rehab. So
ayahuasca kind of.
What did you say? You're asking about ayahuasca?
Ayahuasca as well. I think we've seen similar things. Some amazing things come out of it, and some people just kind of use it for fun.
Right. It's motivation. It's who you're doing it with. Why are you doing it? And again, if you have a group of people that you check in with, and you don't make your decisions yourself, you're in pretty good shape.
So can a prior drug addict be comfortable recommending psychedelic treatments?
You got one right here that's open to it and is very curious about it. So again, and I'll say, have you spoken to your psychiatrist about it? Have you spoken to your therapist about it? What are you looking to find? And if somebody still wants to do it after that, God bless, go. Who am I to tell you what to do to get better? Now, if you're doing ayahuasca once a week, then we got problems, right? I don't know anybody that would enjoy that, but again, it's just looking at it, right? Actually, in the beginning days of Alcoholics Anonymous, I think the founder, and don't quote me, did LSD, if I'm not mistaken. So again, it's not agreeable. It's definitely not the abstinence model. It is a mind-altering substance. Yet, if someone broke their leg and took an opiate properly, I have no issue with that either.
Yeah. Now, have you ever considered, for fun, getting a group together of narcissists and putting them in a room, locking them in there with a bunch of ketamine and ayahuasca?
I think that'd be awesome. We should pay people to do it. We should pay it and film it, and we can make a lot of money.
Now I want to see, if I were on your podcast.
Yes.
Okay, which is showing up.
Which you're gonna be. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, give me a little kind of intro into what I would be talking about in your world. So
you would first talk about who you are. I don't want to know who the doctor is. I want to know who Ben the person is, right? And then we would try to talk about some of your vulnerabilities and your insecurities. And the reason for that is you come off as such a secure person. I think it's so important for people to see your humanity, your vulnerability, so that they can see, oh my God, this guy also, right? Such a successful, amazing, great guy has his challenges. So now you're relatable. And then I can say, so how do you show up for them? How do you get in the room when you're telling yourself, I don't know what you tell yourself, for instance, but if your challenges, I'm pretty sure knowing you the little that you're a perfectionist. So you notice an imperfection in your work that nobody in the world would notice. But my guess is you beat yourself up over that. So the question is, how do you overcome that? How do you work so it doesn't eat you alive? Or in your work, inevitably, right? People are unhappy with themselves many times, so you can't fix that piece. So you fix their eyes and you fix their lips and you fix their chin and but they're still unhappy with yourself, so they somehow blame you. So how do you show up for that and not take it personally? How do you remove the negative self-judgment? And how do you know when excuse my language, when you mess up or when you fuck up, right? How do you know that, Ben? And then how do you make it better, right? Because, hey, you're a pretty in-demand dude, so you can get away with a lot. So how do you make sure that you don't get away with it? How do you behave like a mensch when you don't have to?
Right. Be more honest with yourself.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem with that, but I do have, something struck a cue in me when I was going through your stuff. Is the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So imposter syndrome, I've probably got like a little mild version of that and I have this where patients come in and they say, "Oh my God, you're really, really great at this. I've never seen better." And like for me, I can't take compliments well at all ever. So when they say that, I'm like, "You're better." Have you had, you said yourself you've been through having this kind of imposter syndrome. What is it? Am I suffering? Am I a codependent imposter? My mom says I'm codependent. Am I a codependent imposter? What's happening?
So with me, I was fearful when I can't tell you what you are, and you'll have to figure that out. What I could do is relate to that with me and share what happens to me. So when somebody says thank you to me, or you're great, or I don't like it either. And the reason I don't like it is I'm afraid I'll owe you something. I'm afraid that I have to live up to something that in my mind I'm not. Right? And now you're putting me on a pedestal, and every human being, at least in my life, that I've put on a pedestal, I've knocked off. Right? Because everybody gets knocked off. So that's the big fear.
You mean you've knocked them off like you've killed them?
Yeah, exactly. Shh, don't tell anybody. I don't want the cops to show up in my house. But the greatest issue there is I'm robbing somebody sometimes of the only currency they have. And their currency of saying thank you to me is the only currency they have, right? Many people have paid you already for their services, so they're not going to pay you more money. So when they say thank you or you're amazing, or and we say no, stop it, we're robbing them of that ability to show gratitude. So I'm trying much better to understand that it's my issue if I don't want to believe it in my goodness, greatness. That's me. That's my fear of success, right? We often talk about fear of failure. Fear of success is just as big, right? And if I am that good, what happens? I have that much further to fall down.
I definitely relate to that. So I'd rather do something for someone else and not receive anything in return. I feel better about it.
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, people, the first time we met, you said, will you officiate my wedding? And I'll give you free surgery.
Yeah, I need that ceremony done in like 5 minutes. We were on the podium on the fupa for my sister's wedding, and we were up there, and I think she told the rabbi, she said, "Listen, you've got 15 minutes tops to get through this." And during the speech, the rabbi likes to give a speech, and say what he likes to say, and so, which is kind of redundant. And I started just kind of dozing off, and and I'm not standing there on the fupa, and my sister starts like going like this to him, and she looks at me and goes, "What are you laughing at?" And I'm like, "Oh shit."
I literally, if I was officiating and she told me that, about like 6-7 minutes in, I would have been finished. I'll say, "Okay, now you have 8 minutes to speak. Your turn."
Yeah. But you're definitely hired for the one day.
The gig. You got it.
Yeah, when I get married, you're definitely there. I need you there.
You got it, boss.
All right, so I'll tell everybody, if you want to see a very interesting podcast, I started listening to a couple of them, and I listened to the one with Sloane from Entourage.
Emmanuel Shrieky. She is an amazing young lady.
Emmanuel Shrieky, that's correct. Listen to that one. The one I haven't found yet, but I know you did one with Meta World Peace.
Yeah, so I'm going to get Meta on again. Our audio was not great. And Meta's another perfect example of somebody who showed up. Talks about his mental illness. I mean, this guy came, right, was the greatest, one of the greatest ball players of all time in the beginning, had a brawl, came back from it, you know. But if you look also at some of, and back to Emmanuel, if you look at her her Instagram feed these days, she's speaking about the same thing, about finding commonality, about openness, about listening to each other, about allowing for differences of opinion without disliking each other. So, you know, and that's what you stand for too, Ben. So,
yeah, I wish everybody kind of stood for that. But
yeah, you know,
really.
who cares what you believe? Like, really, does that? I don't care. You know,
Yeah.
as long as you allow me to be and I allow you to be, who cares?
Exactly. As long as we coexist, it works well. All right. So for everybody who wants to see, you can go to the Asher G. So TheAsher, the Asher G. Again, just like Ali G, Becky G, Carol G, Cardi B. So the Asher G, and then his podcast is on iTunes and Spotify, and it is showing up with Asher G, the gentleman, the unconventional rabbi, I would say.
Ben, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for all you do. I know, you know, we're going to end with this because I know it's going to make you uncomfortable, but I know all the good things you do for people that nobody ever talks about. So I want to thank you on behalf of all those people for showing up in that way, for being what I call a man of kindness. So,
well, thank you, sir. I will be showing up to your podcast
you
soon,
got it, boss.
and I'll let you dig in. I'll let you dig in.
You got it. I'll talk to you soon.